Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, our topic is functional fashion, the world of wearables. This is brought to you by azalvo project powered by Jumpstart. I'm your host today, Jeff Hoy. I'm the partnership and marketing manager here at Jumpstart. And before we start, we just want to give a quick introduction about us. We actually have an accelerator coming up in March about wearables, fashion, retail, and lifestyle tech. So for those of you in the audience, if you guys are looking to grow and expand to Asia and get connected with the right people, right network, and grow in this space, feel free to get in touch with us. You can visit www.azalvoproject.com for more details, or just reach out to me directly at jeff@jumpstartmac.com. So today, we're very happy. We have a very truly global perspective on wearables today. All three of our guests here have different backgrounds within the same wearable industry. So we get a good chance to pick their brains on how they see this space in different perspectives. So let me introduce our guests today. So we have Joanne here, who the family business is a manufacturing company building the future in this space. We're actually in this beautiful azalvo space right here in Causeway Bay, Hong Kong. So now her expertise is now combining soft tech into hardware, which usually is the wearable traditional space. She also helps hundreds of startups to grow and scale in this area. So she's the founder and CEO of Azalvo, Joanne here with us. And then we also have Joao dialing in from the UK. He is the wearable expert, as he claims on his LinkedIn profile. And then he's also one of the few handpicked Huawei KOL here in the UK. He's also big in digital health, keynote speaker, and wearable expert. So welcome, Joao. And then we have Florian here, who's the man behind the scene of the wearable that helps hundreds and thousands of musicians worldwide, the founder and CEO of Soundbrenner today joining us. So welcome, Florian. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. So Joao, first of all, congratulations on launching your YouTube channel. I've been watched the video that you had on interviews on digital health, so that was really good. So, you've been wearing different hats, as keynote speakers, as influencer in the wearable space. Can you give us a little bit of insights about your background, and then how do you get into this space? And then obviously right now you're in the UK, and you're one of the very few handpicked at Huawei KOL. How did you get into this whole space?
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the opportunity and the invite, and nice to connect with the other experts. Nice to be here. I'll try very quickly to put everything into perspective and address these 2 or 3 points that you mentioned. My background, I was actually in professional sport for a number of years, and I have 2 passions, sport and health. And then I started working in corporate wellness turned into healthcare. And the past 5 years, I've been heavily involved in digital health, as you mentioned. And it all started by accident. I met another business guy. We co-founded a startup in digital health. We had this big plan about creating an analytics platform. And back then in 2015, I started experimenting wearables and testing wearables. And also I was the business guy that go out to the big manufacturers to try to do partnerships and everything. But I always had an interest from my sporting background and my health background. And also back in the days, I remember in corporate wellness, I don't know if you remember this, but 10, 15 years ago, you had the pedometers, just single digit how many steps you took in a day. So I was from that time. That tells you how old I am. Anyway, but also I do a lot of digital stuff, and as an influencer, I was picked by Huawei as a KOL, key opinion leader globally because of my following and also my digital output, if you like, in terms of social media. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, as you know. So Huawei have a big program with the KOLs to try to reach different audiences in different geographies, and they formed a kind of a global KOL program, and I'm part of that. But I'm involved in a number of things. I hope that summarizes everything very quickly. So thank you.
Great, thank you. That's a great summary of introduction. And just a quick funny joke on the side. The wearable expert tag, I see it on your LinkedIn. Is that a thing that you got along from your friends, or is it like a brand that given by Huawei? How did you come up with that tagline?
Well, as I mentioned, I was probably one of the first people to start like really digging into the wearable space. But two things: one, my passion for wearables and health, and the value that they bring, and the other thing was it was a branding exercise, a strategic alignment, because I was thinking, how can I differentiate myself in a marketplace, my passion for wearables, but also in digital health, was a lot of influences coming up. So I thought I could create something a bit different, and the wearables expert came up.
Awesome. That's definitely a good tag. It's very catchy. So let's go to Florian. So Soundbrenner has been, around for quite some time, and you guys had, massive success in this industry. Can you take us back into the beginning of your journey, and how did you get started? How did you get into this space? And especially, touch a bit on the crowdfunding space as well. I know, back then crowdfunding wasn't as big as it is right now. A lot of people doing Kickstarter, Indiegogo and stuff like that. How did you pick that route and the whole journey? Can you share this with us?
Yeah, definitely. So I started Soundbrenner right after graduating from university about 7 years ago. Basically, I met my co-founder, and we are both passionate about music, making music. And we felt like it would be a great addition to the world of music if you could feel the beats with a device instead of listening to the beat as musicians traditionally do with a metronome. So in short, like our idea was to make a vibrating metronome that you could wear. And naturally, I think for consumer hardware, if you want to manufacture and develop that, it's actually very, very expensive and complicated compared to software. I would say like several times more expensive and complicated because, for example, you have very high fixed costs just for the tooling. You need to make electronics, mechanical design, industrial design. Then you have minimum order quantities of several thousand units to even make a batch. You can just make 10. And so basically the capital requirements force you to do crowdfunding or to win the lottery. And sadly, I didn't win the lottery. Right. So I think for all hardware companies, crowdfunding is the obvious first step because you get market validation and you get capital at the same time. So yeah, it made just a lot of sense for us to do that. And well, in our first crowdfunding campaign, we raised 250,000 US in pre-orders, which was actually not enough to develop and ship the product, but it was enough validation to then raise money from investors to make that happen. And then the second campaign later actually ended last year. We raised 1.6 million US because we had a much more advanced product and we were better at marketing as well. So that's kind of the journey in a nutshell.
Right. So that's great. What about your background itself? Like, did you study, engineering or mechanical design before, or you started out with just a music lover and go into Soundbrenner?
Yeah, I have a business degree and a specialization in the marketing side. And I would say I have a passion for design in general. And likewise, my co-founder is also passionate about product design, but he had a background in music technology where he has a degree in and where he learned to code and solder and build physical products as well. So it was kind of like a perfect combination, traditional setup of someone with a business mind and a technical mind coming together. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a very common, difficulties for some of the founders to come up. Some people have the technical mindset but don't have the business side. But some have the business side, don't have the technical side. So you guys obviously had a great match. Riding on that Kickstarter crowdfunding point that you just made, do you think that you have same success or more or less, if you start Soundbrenner right now in this day of age, 2020, 21?
Yeah, it's hard to guess. I think it's definitely. I'm not even sure if it's like the peak of crowdfunding right now. I feel like it has gotten a little bit less popular. Like I remember the days when there was Pebble and Oculus and all these like huge campaigns that were like $10 million plus. And I feel like we don't have as many of these anymore. Maybe because a lot of Kickstarter and Indiegogo campaigns actually didn't succeed and they were not able to ship. Again, it's like very hard to make hardware. I think that's the main reason for that. So I feel like, for example, when you want to have free press coverage, it's much harder to get nowadays than maybe 5 years ago. And also, I would say the wearable industry in general is a little bit more like less hype. Back then, it was kind of like the launch of the Apple Watch, the Fitbit IPO. So wearables was like the sort of the super cutting edge, and now it's more established and more real. There's less fluff, and but there's like hundreds of millions of people who have wearables now. So I would say would probably be quite a bit harder to get started right now, but it's not impossible if you have a good idea.
Right, yeah, because now it's getting competitive, and back then I think Kickstarter, Indiegogo, these platforms has a lot of tech hardware, right? So you can still within the same realm, you're doing the same thing. But now if you go on Indiegogo and these crowdfunding platforms, you see many other different stuff. You see, people crowdfunding for board games, people crowdfunding for, softwares and stuff. So now it's a bit difficult. So yeah, thank you for your point. Let's go to Joanne. So Joanne, your family business has always been in the traditional manufacturing space, doing textile, doing garment, doing, furniture and stuff. But you also have great insights right now within the wearable space. And recently you guys are doing a lot of, something called wearable textile. Can you share a bit with our audience today, and what is this? And then how did you guys go from a traditional space and go into this space?
Hi, nice to meet everyone here today. So we started the journey around 2 years ago, and we've been asked by different, I would say, more Silicon Valley companies to look at, how to embed wearables into textile. So usually when I would agree with Lauren, the technicalities of it is actually very difficult. So when they come with a brief, when they come with an idea, we actually see what's out there and whether or not we can do what's proposed. When people think of electronics in wearable space, they usually think of just watches, as Lauren mentioned. But when they came to ask us, smart textiles was like, can you react on change and impulse? What is it when you wear this? Can we do it for research? So as you know, some of them is now on the market. It is more of woven in a jersey, whole entire fabric conductive. But we're looking at whether or not it can be done for a particular area. So this is an interesting challenge, but we've been at it for the last year and a half. So we do think it can evolve further. And on other areas, people ask, in terms of chemical, mechanic, or magnetic, I think we're not quite there yet for gaming and for sports, perhaps, but for healthcare and military is a long way to go. But at least people are starting to ask the questions. So when they come and approach us, they want to know what kind of membranes we can actually create from some of the prototypes they've developed in other areas. That's purely not, say, smart textiles as embedded, but just one particular chip. So to be able to add that together and create, like Florence was saying, a vibration or even pressure or force, that's currently being tested. And I don't think we're ready for market yet, but at least these questions are already asked when we're approached. We completely do R&D from scratch, and we have to ask different types of chemists, technicians, body specialists to come in to give us advice. What are the possibilities? So we didn't start out in this space, but we accepted challenges and we start to explore what can be done. So as you know, Jeff, we've been in manufacturing for over 6 years in clothing, especially on the high street, and taking on athletic was something we did maybe around 5 years ago, and from there going into smart textile is a big step from two different categories.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, this is obviously still in the future, as you mentioned. The different functionalities that we can get from the textile. The pressure sensing, the functionality. So I guess for me as a little Marvel fanboy, I guess we're still quite some years away from Iron Man's hoodie, switching into the suit with all the functions that we're gonna have. But yeah, so going on, I think I'll go back to Joa on wearables and some of these stuff as well, because I think Joanne also mentioned a bit on the textile function of wearables. The different industries that we can apply to this, and one of which is, the health tech, the general health wellness industry. And in the recent years, we've been seeing wearables and health are the topics that are getting closer and closer together. And so, Joao, can you give us a little bit insight on why is that happening? Why did they go so well? And do you think that what's the future is going to be like with the combination of the two?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I have a big vision that my vision is that the wearables can change the world. And I've been thinking about that for quite some time. And it seems like a bit exaggerating, but I'll tell you now why it's very prominent. But health tech and fitness is two things in here. Is the consumer health, let's say, fitness, general well-being, and then the healthcare and the medical side. Is a perfect combination because wearables, they gather insights from the human being, from the human body, behavior, health data, all these things that we want to improve, and also that are significant to change human behavior, but also on the healthcare side that are significant to diagnose, prevent, or even manage, for example, a long-term condition. And we can talk about diabetes or heart disease. I mean, if we don't have data, we don't know what's going on. So wearables are a perfect vehicle for that because they gather data and then we can do interventions with that. But going back to that big vision, now it's kind of impossible not to mention COVID, not on a negative connotation, but wearables are actually very significant because now there are studies that they can kind of diagnose some of the vital signs before people are actually aware that they have COVID, changes in temperature and human insides. So, the Oura Ring, the Finnish manufacturer done some studies, but also what is very interesting, and I'm seeing that more and more often, especially in the last 2 years, the wearables now, Jeff, are permeating more or less all industries, from construction to fintech, banking. Now we have, for example, wireless payments with rings. I have lots of wearables in my place. I'm not going to show you all of them now, but I guess people send me things, and but from banking to construction, I mean, wearables now are really spreading to a wide range. And Joao mentioned the natural fit was healthcare and military to start with, but now they have applications in many, many industries because, I mean, they tell us so much, and they are a powerful vehicle to connect people, gather information. Of course, there are a lot of different issues to consider, ethical issues, data. I mean, people are not comfortable using them or share the data, but that's a different story. But there are so many things to consider. But I truly believe that the benefit and also the value is immense. Wearables are like a minefield, and I feel like we just starting now to really develop into the value that is on offer, because the last few years it feels like the revolution was on coming, and now I agree with Florian. Now the market is different. Millions of people are open, are using them. If you had the first version, you had to get the third version. If you have the Apple Watch 3, you want to get the 5, and it's just an evolution. But yeah, it's very exciting, because things are moving so fast, and even now with the pandemic, people are more and more aware of their general health and well-being and what can I do to keep themselves well. They can exercise, they can walk more, they can, for me, sleeping is important. So I measure my sleep. I'm not interested in the steps because I've been doing that for so many years. It's kind of boring now, but I'm interested in my sleep, and other things. But yeah, it's so much to talk about, Jeff. So
yeah. I mean, I totally agree with your point. Like I didn't get into the whole wearable hardware space, I would say, 3-4 years ago when a bunch of my friends actually got me into running, and then I got myself a Garmin watch, and then now I basically can't live without it. It tracks my heart rate, it tracks my sleep, it tracks my steps, how fast I was running. I can't race without it. All these different things, and I think that's the beauty of combining different industries together. It helps sports and wellness, health, and Joanne earlier mentioned military stuff, different functional garment for people in different industry. It could be the law enforcement, all these different people. They will need to have new functionalities to come in, to help to make their job better and live their life easier. So I think that's great. And then Joa also touched on a little bit on the generations of different hardwares, right? You touch a bit on the Apple Watch. So going back into the watch space, ask Warren. This might be a little bit tough questions, but Soundbrenner has been a niche product, right? For talking for artists, for musicians, for performers. And do you see, once Apple Watch is getting bigger and bigger with more functionalities, now it tracks more accurate heart rates, do you think it's a huge competitor to threaten Soundbrenner, or do you guys think, hey, we might actually be able to provide stuff to Apple Watch or have some combination of work together to actually grow?
Yeah, it's actually a really fascinating question that I feel like the wearable space has not really answered yet. So I would say that, for example, for our device, right, so we have very particular hardware components that are related to making music. So for example, you would have an extremely powerful vibration motor that is quite big and has quite a bit of power draw. Or we have a contact tuning microphone and a special mechanical system to attach your device to a guitar, for example, like you can just twist it off your wrist and all these things. So I think none of these features would ever find their way into an Apple Watch. But then at the same time, the kind of why I said it's interesting is no one would want to wear two wearables that look like a watch, especially because you kind of look like an idiot. So I have this problem myself. Obviously, I'm an Apple fan, as you can see in my headphones, right? So I also want to have the Apple Watch, and also I'm passionate about wearables. So I want to wear the Apple Watch, but at the same time, I also want to wear my own product, right? Our product. And if I wear both of them, I look like an idiot. So I feel like probably like like we see in our own customer base, we have, let's say 50% of our customers, they wear our device as their only watch. And then 50% of our customers, they only put on our device when they sit down to play music, and they don't wear it as a watch, either because they don't want to have a watch, or they want to have a mechanical watch, or they want to have a super cutting edge fitness Apple Watch that we will never be able to match in those areas, right? And so, yeah, I think in the future, what I'm thinking of is perhaps that some wearables will turn more into a different form factor than a watch, maybe something like a bracelet, or there are different options, so that it becomes better and more more normal to wear multiple wearables at the same time. So that's how I think about it. But I mean, yeah, to answer the question, I'm not too worried about Apple Watch ruining our opportunities, because yeah, it's so different from what we do.
Right. And it's great. I actually read and watched a few videos about what you guys are doing. You guys work very hard, getting the Soundbrenner from the pulse to the core. That's what you did just now. And do you see the product launch itself make what kind of change you observe in the music industry? Do you think you get more people into music, you get more people into performing, or is there a trend shift within the music industry itself?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's our mission, right? So we want to help existing musicians to master their craft, as we say, but then also we want to make music making more accessible to people. Over 90% of people who try learning an instrument give up in the first year, so almost everyone. And there's for sure a lot of opportunities with our wearable devices, and also with our mobile apps that we also do to remove friction from learning music to make it easier. So I feel like even though we're 7 years in, I feel like we're still just at 1% of the potential. If we reach all our goals, we could truly revolutionize the world of playing instruments, but we're not quite there yet. But we're definitely also leaving a mark with our products and improving things. So I would say, yeah, for sure, we're changing it for the better, and we're very happy about that.
That's awesome, and that's a great stat to know. personally, I picked up how to play piano. I taught myself how to play piano over the COVID period last year. It's almost hitting that 1 year mark, and my practice time is getting lesser and lesser. So, yeah, I
Hey,
could
if you're
probably
still
pick
playing
up
1 year later, then you are one of you're in the top 10% for sure. So
okay, I feel proud. I feel proud.
yeah.
Okay, so going back to the textile part with Joanne, where do you see this whole trend of merging this textile tech, wearables going into maybe less 5 or 10 years later? You said earlier, this whole thing is still in development, but maybe 5 or 10 years later we'll scratch the top layer of the surface. What would you think it will be the first major thing that we'll see on the market?
I guess let me correct myself. For us, we're in our infancy in terms of going at it from scratch and rethinking what are the potentials for knitted wearables. But it doesn't mean that the market itself hasn't evolved. Papers have been around the last 10 years at least, both on a conductive element to how it could be done. So I would say the market of even for medical, it's been used for patients and medical patients. It's just more as an everyday application. That part and to be affordable. People give us price points of what they want that to be. That itself is a challenge that we're up to review. And when you were saying that you love comics, I wanted to say. Yeah, we did get approached by gaming companies to say, well, can you, from I think I had a Crunchbase, so one of the smaller, actually huge, but startups to say, can we have a garment where we can just beat someone up, but it's a mannequin, and they're like, okay, sure. And this was a request last March, and so that's why I say it can be done. It's just to develop and then to commercialize and to produce is things that people don't put into account for. Do we have the machinery to do it? And are the supply chain ready for that part of the growth? So that's why I said it will take some time. But if everything falls into place, then I think within the next 12 to 18 months, we'll see more and more of it into market, especially when we reflected on how it can help us the last year because of COVID. And one of the topics Joao mentioned was, how to read our data so that we can all be healthier. I don't like to use terminologies, but Internet of Things really changed, that digitalization, and it has really pushed us to think, okay, well, what kind of data do we want from the person, and if that person is really healthy, which areas do we want to monitor? We're just here to support the technology that's out there to ensure that that information is readily charged, sent through, on different types of platforms. As Bluetooth or even patent products, so that you're able to collect and continue to send that information to users so they're engaged. So I agree. It won't be just watches. It will be all types of different things. And I think people have also looked into lights and optic fibers. I think it's more not functional yet. It's more cool, but if there's further function from it, then it's definitely more and more people will look into how to grow in this space. So that's why in 5 to 10 years time, I see a lot of different ways we can apply. We just need to treat it like it's an open API where we're all learning from each other in order to really navigate the coming years and grow from here. So everything I've seen in the market excites me. And I do think those that have used it for other areas can use it for fun, as opposed to just for. So for us, we're playing around, challenging ourselves, signing lots of NDAs, but at least I think we can get there. So yeah, that's all I can share at the moment. But it is a huge market, and huge market comes from I got the Fitbit for Christmas. So I do think it's the start for a majority of people to really track their health, their status. And I've been running with Strava and information all sent through. So it's good. my husband knows where I am based on my watch. So
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a very very exciting time that you mentioned. We took a quick dive into the future, how we see all these different things will evolve, especially within your expertise in industries. And now to throw like open questions to all three of our guests. There's always, you guys have been working with different walks in industry, of wearables and hardware people, and there's always a huge struggle for SMEs or startups to commercialize their product. We mentioned earlier, there are a lot of ideas throwing around online. There are a lot of people try to build a prototype, but from the garage to actually to the market is a big step. There's a big gap in between. So what would be some of the advice that you would give to these SMEs and startups? How should they go about and approach this gap right between the idea and the market? Maybe Joao, you can go ahead and give some insight.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was involved with startups. I mean, I have 2 failures already to my name, and hardware, as Florian and Joan know better than me, hardware is actually very difficult. It's not just creating a software product that we tested and launch in a couple of months. Hardware is a different ballgame. But also from my experience, well, it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Because if you don't have in-house expertise, you don't have money to hire the right people, you don't have money to get the products, it's complex and complicated at the beginning. But also, I think now we've seen a new development in the marketplace. Because, for example, if Florian was developing his product, he's been doing for 5 or 6 years, but if he was developing this product 10 years ago, probably he would be premature even trying to enter the marketplace, because we're still in a, let's say, wearables generation 1, wearables 1.0. Now is different. I think the market is more mature, but also we face the same dilemmas, where we find money if we don't have a product. If we don't have a product, we don't have, the startup conundrum, and guys, you work in that space, and this is a vicious circle. But also, one of the things that I see, and I advise startups now and do lots of different things, is the product market fit, which in healthcare is extremely difficult and is becoming more and more competitive. You see lots of startups, not everybody is successful, but really understand where the product fits into the marketplace. Is not just creating a product and think, actually, I think everybody's gonna like my watch. It's a bit deeper than that, because, addressing some of the market wants and needs is actually very difficult. And some industries are not specific, such as music. Okay, you love music or not. But and this is a mistake that I've done in the past, and I see some founders doing, is you create a product and you think, oh, it's a product for everybody. And it's never like that. And then we start narrow down, and you start actually feeling a bit demotivated, because the mountains starts to kind of feel bigger and bigger and bigger, and you fail within 2 or 3 years. But what I also see is that, and I want to pass this message to founders, is that a good startup really matures about 4, 5, 6 years time. So if you find a way to get there, you have a good chance. But the 2-3 year mark is extremely challenging. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. Florian or Joanne, you guys have anything to add on this? You good?
no, we're good. I think startup is hard.
Yeah, but I think the mark that Joao gave is great, especially for Florian. You guys, the 4 or 5 year marks is especially Soundbrenner make the boom to the market and actually hit worldwide. The audience is there, and yeah. So I guess we also touched on the next question a little bit earlier. So for which of the current market you see wearable technology is going to make the most sense or makes the most splash upcoming in the future? It could be medical, gaming, sports, furniture, whatever. What would you guys think is the next big industry that's
Right.
taking wearables hardware?
Well, I do think that it is probably in the area of health, because if you look at what wearables have as unique advantages compared to other product categories, one of them is definitely that you wear them on your body and that they have the potential to measure your body like the whole day, right? So I really like the example of Tim Cook, who said once the analogy, for your car, you have a dashboard. So as soon as there's a little problem with your car, you will see in your dashboard the lights go on, and it will tell you, go to a mechanic and fix it before your car breaks down and falls apart, right? But then for the human body, you don't have that. You actually have to wait until something breaks, and then you're like, well, damn, now it's sort of too late, right? And I feel like getting that dashboard for the human body that tells you, and the light goes on as soon as something is like that could be one of, you know, that could be huge. Like Joao said as well, like this could like change the world in a way. And actually also Tim Cook said that he thinks that the contribution of Apple over the next 20 years will be bigger than even the smartphone and iPhone. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So that would be my bet if I had to pick one.
Right. Joanna or Joel, you have a new pick?
I agree in terms of healthcare being a need. I think I sometimes study a little bit on how, you know, China's great project has been on like, you know, Chinese health and how to ensure that you have enough data to actually know about how people's daily health are. But if we connect that, let's not talk about privacy issue, but if we connect that for medical reasons and breakthroughs, then I think you definitely be able to monitor your health in a lot better, and you're able to really identify issues and to be able to improve upon your everyday life. So agree, healthcare specifically. Military has been interesting. I think people, you know, with all people throughout the world, it's been the topic of like, how do you protect your own? So the way in which membranes can be created to protect people with vibration, force, and pressure, and to use it in a clothing garment. I think that will be quite interesting of a breakthrough. And from there, if we're in our second phase, you know, as opposed to our first phase of wearable in terms of textile, then I do think there's another stage where coming where the next 10 years you see further innovation that will start from there, but can be something else for everyday use. So the breakthroughs I look forward to seeing more and more of, especially those that are interested, and then coming back and say, what can we do? Because the papers are out there, the ideas are out there. It's really putting it together into a product that is a need and meets that demand. And so I think that's going to, hopefully I've answered a bit of your question. I think all the possibilities, but those two areas are of particular interest. But yeah.
Great. Joel, you have another industry, or you agree with the points made?
I do agree with Florian. Yeah, health is big, and Apple certainly has an interest on it. And Joanne, of course, I agree with you. I because healthcare is the natural. I mean, is my industry, is the things that I'm involved on the day-to-day life, if you like. I'm going to challenge myself and start thinking out of the box and come from another perspective. And I'll give you a few data points. The wearables are growing in 2020 about 14% per year. So good news, the industry is upcoming and growing year on. The hearables, which Florian's got the latest gadget there, grew 32% last year. And you also, Jeff, has some hearables there, the iPod type of things. Huawei got some good stuff and other brands. And they accounted for 60% last year of the all wearables devices. So it's huge. The wearables starting to go into different places, as you guys know. And the wristbands and the smart watches accounted for 39% of all shippings around the world. and they down from 46%. So that gives us an indication that the smartwatches and the wristbands are slowly declining. And I tell you why. And this is good news for Joao, for the textile industry. The wearables start to go in different places. The sensors can go anywhere, from smart belts to t-shirts to e-textile. But also I see a lot of industries being really revolutionized by wearables. But I really think that fashion tech will be very, very, very big, because we want to look good, we want to feel good factor. I want a nice watch, I want a nice jacket, and if the jacket has a wearable or a sensor, enough, I can wear the watch that I really like. I had the same issues with the dilemma with Florian, because I have 3 wearables and then I have a watch that I like. I'm not gonna wear 4 wearables, so I want that wearable, but I want to use my nice watch. So I think the fashion tech will solve this problem, because we can wear what we like, what we want, and be personalized. So good news for Joao, but I really believe that fashion tech is incredibly exciting.
Great, awesome. Great. So I think we're running short on time, so maybe we can wrap up with the one last question. Maybe each of you can give one quick advice to wearable startups, founders that are listening right now. What advice would you give them in their journey?
I can start. So I would say for like any hardware startup, and also for wearables, it's quite important to pick a very narrow problem and solve it really well. I've seen quite a few startups that have, for example, tried to revolutionize headphones or something like this, which is like a very mass market. And my experience tells me it's almost impossible to compete with like Apple, Amazon, Google in any of these mass market areas. Like your best bet is to really solve something narrow, for example, like we do in music, and then grow from there. It's kind of like a wedge into the market, getting a wedge into the door, and then opening from there. And that's one thing you should do better than anybody in the world. And that's how you can build on, because I think I already explained why. So that's my one tip.
Great.
I think for startups out there, I think for wearables specifically, a lot of times people say, "Oh, I've worked on it months now. Where am I going?" It's more than months sometimes when it comes to this particular sector. When we went from fashion to athletic leisure, it took us quite a few years to move out of just fashion alone. So in the current situation, the way we do due diligence and the way we do research, minimum is 12 to 18 to 24 months. So if you want things to happen right away and you have all the money in the world, it's not really about the money. It's about the work and the thought process and the testing and the retesting and getting different expertise coming in to give you the right feedback. That itself, and to commercialize, it just doesn't happen overnight. So I don't want to discourage people to enter the space. I mean, you just have to be very patient, and as we are learning to be, but it can be done. So I would agree with Lauren, narrow it down a bit what problem you want to solve, but at the same time, don't bank on getting that idea out in 3 to 6 months time, because there are just not the right manufacturers to support your ideas right away. And from there, treat every step as if every day you're progressing in the right direction, then I really think you're doing great. If you're not, then take a break, and come back to it later on. So it's definitely not the easiest category to tackle. Yeah, so that's
Awesome.
just me coming from a research and business angle.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you,
maybe
Joao.
to speak in terms of the difficulty, I think everyone should ask themselves really hard if they really have to make their own wearable, or if they can build just a software on top of the platform of, let's say, an Apple Watch or Android, and like you can save yourself so much work if you can do that. But sometimes you cannot, right? So in our case, we cannot. If you look at Peloton, they could not build their fitness system on top of the fitness gear and equipment of other manufacturers, so they had to make their own. Then it's just like that, and you have to do it. But if you don't have to, then don't do it. That would be my advice.
Great. Joao, you have one last piece of advice?
Sure, very good. You kind of took me to my startup days, my own experience, you know, and we could do a session just on a startup failure. But anyway, for all the founders out there, I think my advice would be fail. I mean, encourage yourself to fail fast, and I'll tell you why. You'll find out what it doesn't work very quickly, so you can mend it. And also, as founders, and I'm going to put myself as a founder now, the last thing we want is to fail. So we avoid that to the maximum. We push to the end, we try everything not to fail, and then sometimes that works against you because you come to a stage there is no way back. So the process is actually the other way around, and I learned that from experience. Fail fast, find out what doesn't work. If you try to solve a problem that is impossible, or you don't have the money, whatever that is, so you can kind of address it, fix it, and move on. Because failure is learning, isn't it? But we as human beings learn from our descendants that failure is a bad thing. And so as a company, you try to avoid that to the max, but also you go to the bitter end and then there is no way back. So I would say just constantly kind of fail, because that will actually help you to keep going instead of really failing. That would be my advice.
That's gold. That's gold. That's the true spirit of startups. So we're coming to the end of the time frame for the whole webinar. So, quick summary, 3 pieces of advice. Fail fast, be patient, and find your niche. I think that's really good for not just wearables, not just hardware, but all startups should take away from this. And if the audience wants to hear more advice like this, get the network. Again, want to give a plug. Azalvo project powered by Jumpstart, we're doing accelerator in March. So if you guys are in the wearable, fashion, retail, lifestyle, tech space, feel free to get in touch with us. We're here to help. We want to help you guys to grow in Asia. But Joao, Florian, and Joanne, thank you so much for your time for today to share your insights and your industry expertise with us and the audience. So we hope to see you guys next time. But have a good day. Thank you and goodbye.